Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm Stephanie Marsh, Director of Communications for the City of Akron. We're here today to discuss the officer-involved shooting which occurred on Thursday, November 28th, leaving 15-year-old Jazmir Tucker deceased. Last night, we released several body-worn camera videos, as well as an in-car video from the incident. We also released statements from both Akron Mayor Shamus Malik and Police Chief Brian Harding. Today, we'd like to read you those statements and give media an opportunity to ask questions. We want to be clear. The state's Bureau of Criminal Investigation, known as BCI for short, is conducting an independent investigation of this incident. There are many questions that ultimately will not have answers until they have completed their investigation. We do not have any new information to share today, and we will be very limited on what we can answer at this time. But we wanted to give you an opportunity to hear from the mayor and the chief directly on this incident and to ask your questions. At this time, I'd like to welcome up Akron Mayor Shamus Malik.
Good morning. To lose someone in an officer-involved shooting is truly heartbreaking, especially someone so young. Jazmir was beloved by many people, and as I said last night, my heart is with his family, friends, and classmates as they deal with this tragedy. An officer's decision to use deadly force is the most consequential decision they can make, and the circumstances surrounding the use of deadly force demand a heightened scrutiny. Often in these incidents, viewing the officer-worn body camera footage and other available video helps to clarify circumstances and answer some questions. It can also raise additional questions. Last night, we released several videos from the incident. After viewing them, I am left with many serious questions. The two officers who initially responded did not activate their body cameras upon exiting the vehicle. At some point, the cameras were automatically activated due to the presence of a nearby cruiser with activated lights, and once activated, the cameras can automatically store 30 seconds of video without audio. So we have some video without audio of the shooting. So my initial questions are why the cameras were not activated by the officers and whether this violated the body-worn camera policy. This will be reviewed in our internal investigation. I also believe many will ask why the officers used rifles instead of handguns in responding to this incident. This will be something that we discuss more going forward, both in our internal investigation as well as part of our comprehensive review of use of force, including when and how different weapons are used. In hindsight, the amount of time that expired between the shooting and the initiation of physical aid to Jazmir is deeply troubling to me. I want to be clear that any unreasonable delay by police officers in rendering aid is unacceptable and has no place in Akron. This issue will be part of our internal investigation, but in the meantime, Chief Harding has instructed APD leadership to conduct roll call trainings immediately with all of our patrol officers regarding on-scene security and rendering aid. Due to the angle of the body cameras and the light shining on Jazmir after he was initially shot, it's hard to make out from the videos what exactly happened leading up to the shooting and immediately following it. A gun was recovered from his zipped up jacket pocket. Given that, why did the officer decide to use his weapon? That question will be the focus of the state's Bureau of Criminal Investigation, BCI, investigation, which began on the night of the shooting. Once BCI has completed its investigation, the results will be presented to the Ohio Attorney General's office for review and presentation to a grand jury of citizens here in Summit County. The grand jury will determine whether any criminal charges should be filed. When that process is complete, the full BCI investigation will be available to the public on the BCI website. Additionally, after the grand jury process, the city will conduct its internal investigation into the use of force and determine whether a violation occurred. As our community watches these videos, I know there will be many questions. I wish we had more answers to provide in this moment. There are many questions we are not able to answer until the BCI investigation is completed. We do know that 2 shell casings were recovered in the northeast portion of Miller South, and that those are being tested against the gun that was recovered. I think any time we have young people in our community carrying weapons, we have to ask ourselves why, and we have to work to change that. While the BCI and grand jury process move forward, there are steps that the City of Akron must take now. This year, there have been several incidents involving use of force that have raised concerns. In recent months, I've shared plans to conduct a comprehensive review of Akron's use of force policy and practices, as well as agency culture. This is essential to ensuring effective and accountable policing in our community. Next week, I will share more details about this use of force review and how I believe this will translate into meaningful and systemic change. I have an enormous amount of respect for our officers and the challenging situations they face. So far this year, Akron police officers have recovered over 950 illegally carried guns in our community. And these situations thankfully did not result in loss of life. But this incident that we're talking about today did result in loss of life. And our focus must be on doing everything we can to improve our response in situations like this. That focus is my responsibility as mayor, and that is what our community deserves. Our community must have trust in our police department, and that requires accountability in specific incidents, and it requires strengthening our policy, practices, and culture. To any resident wishing to exercise their constitutional right to peacefully protest, protesting is a highly protected form of speech. We will do all we can to make space for that. We will also be prepared in the event that a protest becomes unlawful, in the event that there's damage to property or injury to others. Everyone has a right to protest, but no one has a right to endanger others. To those in our community who are hurting right now, I want you to know that I hear you. To those who are angry and frustrated, I hear you. And to those who want to see action, I view this as essential for our community, and it is my commitment to you that you will see it. Thank you.
Good morning. I want to start by sharing my condolences with the family and friends of Jazmir Tucker. An incident like this is tragic for our officers, for our community, but most especially for the loved ones who lost somebody. I know that no officer ever wants to use their weapon in the line of duty. It is the most serious decision any officer can make, and when that decision results in the loss of life, it's an outcome none of us wish to see. The independent investigation is in its very early stages, and there is much we still do not know about what occurred. Even after viewing the videos, there are many things we do not know. I know there are many in the community who have questions and concerns related to the timeliness of the body-worn camera, the delay in rendering aid, and the shooting itself. I hear those concerns, and my hope is that the investigation will provide more clarity. Our community, our department, and most importantly, Jazmir's family deserve and need answers to those questions. I want to thank the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation for agreeing to take on this case. I am confident that they will conduct an investigation that will provide many of the answers to the current unknowns. We can only build trust with accountability, and so that will be critical as the investigation unfolds. At the conclusion of the BCI investigation, I will order our Office of Professional Standards and Accountability to conduct an internal investigation to determine if any policies were violated. I know the men and women of the Akron Police Department to be some of the finest people I've ever met. They're dedicated to their roles and to the service to this community. Incidents like this are hard on our community, and they're extremely hard on our officers. I want to thank our officers for continually showing up for our residents and for the important work they do each and every day. Finally, I want everyone to know that I completely support Mayor Malek's vision for the use of force policy review. Our department and our officers will be involved every step of the way in helping to address any questions or concerns from residents throughout that process. I believe this review will help better set our officers and our citizens up for success in all encounters and help ensure that unwanted outcomes are less likely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. Before we begin our Q&A, I want to again reiterate there are many questions that we simply do not have the answers to in this moment. We will do our best to address the areas that we can today. I would ask media to please keep your questions to one at a time to be respectful of others wishing to ask theirs. And if you could please speak loudly and clearly so those watching from our live stream would be able to hear you. At this time, I'd open it up for questions. Doug?
What was the specific model of rifle used? What's the policies or circumstances of when those rifles are used?
Chief, did you answer that?
I do not have the specifics on the weapons. We have policies that generally cover our response, not specifically around when those weapons will be used. But I think it's important to note that in the last several years in law enforcement in general, officers are using rifles now in response to what we're seeing on the street. We place our officers in really complex situations when we ask them to respond to shootings, and so it's not uncommon, but there's not a clear definition in our policy on that.
Can you elaborate on when the circumstances those have been used recently?
Yeah, so our officers, if they're responding to a shots fired call, someone they know to be armed, it's quite common for them to respond with a rifle, and that's kind of best practice across the country as well.
Again, a reminder to keep one question at a time, please. Derek?
Yeah, how many times was Jazmir shot and where?
Answer that. Chief?
Yeah, we don't have that information, and that will be part of the BCI investigative process.
Based on the video that you have watched, and I'm assuming you watched more than what was released to us because some of it's been blurred, what actual life-saving rendering aid was provided to Jazmir by police before paramedics arrived? Was there CPR? Was anything done? Chest seal? Did they actually do anything during the time before they rolled him over and handcuffed him?
Yes, so the officers are clearing that and start to apply chest seals, but prior to the paramedics arrive, or as the paramedics are arriving.
They did apply the chest
Yes.
seal, or they started?
My understanding is they started to at that point, they began to put one on, yes.
Anyone over here? Go ahead.
So, Mayor, I want to be clear, and maybe, Chief, this is a question for you. The weapon that Jazmir had, was that inside a zipped-up pocket? So when the officers encountered him, just trying to clarify your statement, was he brandishing a weapon, or was that weapon?
We do not know what the officers saw in responding to the scene. What I was speaking to is what you see in the body camera footage when they approach him. So we do not know, and that will be, again, the subject of BCI investigation.
We saw in the body cam footage, officers asking to check the parking lot where they had heard shots fired, and I know you said you found the 2 bullet casings. Do we know if there's anyone else involved that may have been shot at in the parking lot, or anything additional in regards to what happened before the shooting?
We do not have those answers at this time, no.
This is for the mayor. You spoke about teens with firearms and some of your desires to fix some of these issues. A lot of the scope of possible solutions for some of those things aren't under the standard powers of a mayor. Do you have any frustrations in trying to solve this with that in mind?
These are issues that we've been talking about this year. These are issues that the community has been talking about for a long time. Safety, education, protecting our youth, giving our youth exciting, empowering things to do, and helping keep them out of trouble. These are all things we've been working on. They're not the subject of this specific incident and why we're here, but it is something that we as a community, as a society, have to be relentlessly focused on. And so you'll continue to hear from this administration about ways in which we are trying to protect our youth, empower our youth, and support them. So I appreciate the question.
Derek, go ahead.
Did officers make any commands to Jazmir before opening fire?
We do not have that information. It'll be, again, the subject of BCI investigation.
Chief, this is specifically for you. part of the reason that we don't know the answer to questions like that and whether or not he was brandishing a weapon before the body camera came on is because we don't see it, we don't hear it, we don't know that. What is the policy regarding the use of those body-worn cameras?
So we have a policy which is available online and the use of our body-worn cameras, and we can provide that as well. The policy is when we respond to a call, our officers should activate their body-worn camera. There are exceptions built in if there's something that occurs quickly that they don't have time to do that, and I just don't know what they perceived at that point yet.
Doug?
What's the name of the officer who pulled the trigger?
We are not going to be providing that today. In each situation that we have addressed this year involving use of force, we have we have shared names, but we have in each case weighed specific threats that officers are facing versus the value that we do have in transparency. And so we'll continue to work on assessing that and making that evaluation in light of releasing the information that we did last night. So I understand why it's being asked, but that is the process that we've used this year that we feel is appropriate. We have an obligation to make sure that folks are safe from harm, and at the same time, we also have to balance that against the interest of transparency. So.
Back to the rendering aid, was CPR an option? Should CPR have been used on Jazmir? And what possible reasons could there be for it to take so long for officers to approach? Somewhere between 6 and 8 minutes? I don't know if you have an exact time on that.
So as we mentioned several times, we do not have all the facts right now to accurately assess what occurred. That'll be part of the BCI investigation. So I don't want to speculate on that. Hopefully those are things that we'll look for between their investigation and our internal investigation at the same time.
Are there reasons why?
Yeah, the first scene, when officers respond to a scene, the first thing they need to do is assess the safety of the scene. After that assessment, if they believe that the scene is safe, then we go to rendering aid and calling for EMS. That's a decision the officers have to make at that point, and I do not have information at this point to reference what they were doing there. I do know that they were calling for ballistic shields to approach, and that was what you heard on some of the video.
And the CPR thing, should that have been done?
I just can't I'm not going to speculate. I don't know right now.
Have either of you spoken with Jazmir's family, and can you speak to when they were given the video last night? Because I know in their press conference they said maybe they hadn't gotten it soon enough.
I've shared my condolences publicly. I certainly, my heart goes out to them. I haven't wanted to, impose. This is not about me, but certainly, they have my heartfelt sympathies. The family was given the opportunity to view the footage yesterday before it was released to the public. So we went through that process.
So without divulging the name of the officer, what can you tell us about this officer, the officer who fired these rounds?
The officer's file is available for public record request. I don't have details to share sitting here today, but that certainly can be requested and can be provided. As we've shared, he has spent nearly 5 years with the department, and that's what I can share here.
You mentioned how this has been one of a number of kind of high-profile incidents involving teens and police over the last year or so. Is there anything your administration is looking into or trying to do to help ensure that doesn't lead to any rising tensions between the community members, but maybe specifically teenagers and the police department?
That is exactly why we are going to be talking more about that use of force review next week, to be able to have those conversations, but more than conversations, take actionable steps to strengthen our policies, our practices, our culture. As I said, our officers deal with difficult circumstances, right? When you look at the number of illegally carried weapons being taken off the street, at the same time, we all want to make sure that encounters with police are safe, and that outcomes that our negative outcomes that involve deadly force are as least likely as possible. And so that will be our focus. That will be something, again, we talk about in much more detail next week.
We'll take 2 more questions. Bob?
Are all, this might be for the chief, but are all rifles department issued, or do officers buy their own rifles? And is this one a department issued rifle or not? And can they be modified as in putting a silencer or anything like that?
The majority of the officers purchase their own weapons. They're required to go through training and qualify with them, and then we document that information.
So they are department issued or?
No, the majority of the rifles are not department issued. We have some. The majority of the officers purchase themselves, but they have to qualify with them, with us, and they go through training with those as well.
Includes this one then?
Correct.
This one?
Derek?
When will the analysis of the 2 shell casings recovered from where officers heard shots be completed?
That will ultimately be up to BCI when they enter those in NIBIN, but hopefully I would hope to have answers on that question next week.
All right, that concludes today's press conference. Thank you so much for coming. Anyone with additional questions, please reach out to press@akronohio.gov or to Captain Michael Miller, who's our PIO for Akron Police. You can reach him at MAMILLER@akronohio.gov. Thank you.